All right, so I'm going to do the, kind of go over the first problem of your Chapter 13 homework, Part 1. So your homework will be pages 21 to 25. I'm going to do this first one with you. So this first problem says, over a 4-month period among 30 people with bipolar disorder, patients who were given a high dose, which was 10 grams a day of omega-3 fats from fish oil, improved more than those given a placebo. And that was in a particular article in General Psychiatry of 1999. So the first thing you need to do is decide if you have got a observational study or an experiment. And so hopefully you can figure out that you have got an experiment because you have a treatment. So because this is something where we have a treatment group, then we are not just observing, we've got an experiment. So because of that, then we do not need this section of questions. It says if this is an observational study, then you will do these questions here. But we don't need that. So we're going to go on to the part down here that says if this is an experiment. And so I'm going to follow through these questions a little bit of time. I'll kind of keep it covered. You can still see that, but this will keep us focused here. So since this is an experiment, the first question is, what are the subjects and how are they, what are the subjects studied and how were they selected? And so we can tell here that we probably, we've got, and be specific with this. Tell me exactly. Don't just tell me bipolar patients. We have got 30 people with bipolar disorder, okay? So we've got 30 people. So that is our subjects in our sample, and that is in our experiment. Now, because these people are taking medicine, I would imagine that they are volunteers, okay? So that's what we're going to go with, is that these are volunteers. All right, so the next problem asks us about this thing called factors and levels. And so let me talk to you about what that is talking about. So a factor is think of factors in terms of, the items that get assigned to a subject. So in this case, we have got each subject receiving one kind of item. And that one kind of item that they get, that one factor, is a type of medicine, which in this case is the fish oil. So they have one factor. If I was going to do, if I had multiple factors, it might be something like this. We might say something like, so this is just a for instance, we might have it such that our patients will go through the plan and they will get a treatment, they will get a type of medicine, and that, it could be this. And that could be either 0 or 10 grams of fish oil or 0 grams, okay? And then maybe they are also going to receive an exercise regimen. And that would be, maybe 30 minutes a day of exercise or no exercise per day. So in this case, you would say that you have got 2 factors. Okay, in this case, you would say you've got 2 factors, and that and they are the medicine. And so the medicine itself, medicine has 2 levels, and that is this. And then the exercise has got 2 levels, and that was that. Okay? So that would be what it might look like if you had 2 factors. But here in this case, we have got 1 factor, the medicine, 2 levels, 10 grams and the 0 grams. The 0 gram is considered a level, okay? And so then that makes us have 2 treatment groups total. I'll have 2 separate treatment groups. All right. Now, the response being measured. I want you to think of this in terms of, this is the response that I'm talking about, per patient. What are you measuring? At the end of the time, when you come to the end, what have you measured for the patient? And it used some of the same language it uses up above. In this case, it actually specifically says, we are measuring this improvement. Okay, so I'm going to reference that improvement. So, therefore, I put this. We've got the improvement of the bipolar disorder, or maybe the bipolar symptoms. Okay, something along those lines. Now, I would like for you to go ahead and skip these design questions right now because we have not quite gotten to those. So do skip the design question at this point. All right, and then up here, whether it is blind or double blind, so let's talk about that. So we've got a situation where because we know and we're told there was a placebo, then we know it is at least single blind. Okay, so we know that it is at least single blind because the patients do not know which treatment they have, the 10 grams or the 0 grams. And, remember, why would we consider doing that? Why might we consider blinding the patients? And that answer is because your bipolar symptoms are a mood situation, and so moods and pain and psychological responses we might want to curb against the placebo effect. All right. And again, we don't know if the doctors are being held, being blinded from who's getting what treatment as well. So we can't say about that. All right. So at this time, let's talk about this thing, parameter of interest, and then we'll talk about the scope. All right. So parameter of interest. This parameter of interest, okay, this really stems from the topic up here where we were talking about your response variable. So this parameter of interest really is related to this response variable, okay? Whereas the response variable was, what you were measuring per patient. The parameter is what are you going to be saying about the whole entire population? What are you going to be saying about the whole entire population? And in this case, I really think it could be one of two things. And it's going to be a type of average or a proportion. And so I think it depends on what kind of data did you collect. Did you collect data measured on a scale of 1 to 10? Was there improvement measured on a scale of 1 to 10? If the improvement was measured on a scale of 1 to 10, you would average those numbers and you would get a rating for the average improvement for the population. Okay? But what if the question at the end of the study was, did you improve, yes or no? So if the question was, did you improve, yes or no? Did you improve, yes or no? Then that means we would end up saying, oh, we have a proportion of the patients in the population that would improve. I expect a particular proportion who would improve. And so in that case, we would say the proportion of patients who improve. Okay, so what information are you obtaining about, and this is right, it's not really about these subjects, it's about what are we going to be saying about the population. So that I need to fix that wording. What are we going to be saying about the population, not just these subjects in the experiment? All right, and finally, The nature and scope of this conclusion. Really, here are the two things that I want to be able to tell. Okay? So here are the things that I want us to tell. First off, who can you generalize to? You know, if it was an observational study and you randomly selected the data to look at, or you randomly selected the subjects, then you can generalize to the population. So, did you have randomly selected subjects? If so, then you can generalize to the population. If you just had volunteers, then you can just generalize to the volunteers. Okay, so that's one thing I'm looking for. The second thing is, can you draw a cause and effect conclusion? Okay, and that really is based on, did you have a treatment that you randomly assigned, treatment? Technically, we need that random assignment to the treatment groups. I don't know if we'll be told enough information to know that we had that, okay? But technically, you need a treatment with that random assignment to the treatment groups, okay? So those are the two things. So in this case, we have an experiment, and so I'm telling you that we could infer cause and effects, if this was done properly, if the experiment was done properly. But we have volunteers. So since we have volunteers, I cannot generalize to the population. Since we have volunteers, generalization has its limits. We can only, the generalization is limited to the volunteers. Who can we generalize to? We can only generalize to the volunteers. All right. So the other pages in this homework